Hi, I'm Renee. This is Renee. This channel is a quiet space for people who are navigating transformation, transitions in life, and the thresholds that come in between those things. Today, I want to explore a little bit around uh, this question that I've been sitting with for a while now. And that is, I carried this lifelong dream of living in France since I was a small child. Why did it take me until I was 61, 61, um, to say yes to that dream? Why? um, and I've been sitting with this question for a while now. And while the answer to this question is nuanced and complex, at the end of the day, it comes down to fear. And not just my fear, but also the fear of others. Not of others, the fear from others. Let me explain what I mean by that. So I had my own fears around a move to France at various points in my life. When I thought about doing it, after high school, I thought, could I? I had a boyfriend, I had friends, like there was all of this, like this idea that that living abroad, I went to high school in a very small town, and it was almost like otherizing to think that I could choose something like that. I remember that kind of feeling like, ooh, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm not worthy of such a grand dream. And that thought process wasn't exactly helped by the fact that when I would bring it up, I lived with my grandparents during high school because my parents were split up. And and I remember my grandmother absolutely putting the kibosh on any idea that I would do anything other than get my bum right to university, and then firmly her plan, a university degree, marriage, and children. Like that was the laid out plan that I was supposed to be on, and any deviation from that was going to be heard from her. So I think this kind of like feeling that, oh, this dream might be bigger, or I might not be worthy of this dream, and these messages from my grandmother around, um, I had this other plan. Like had these steps that everyone was supposed to follow these steps, really made choosing France at that point of my life feel like such a daunting thing that I just didn't. And I didn't after university for much the same reason. After all, I was supposed to then get married and start a family, which is exactly what I did. And then later on in my 30s, I, as things happen, life goes on, and marriage and children and work and career, and I find myself being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder and really not feeling well in my body. And up until that point, just kind of rotely going through life. And that illness and addressing that illness, which took time and still takes time, and um, and the journey around that really made me begin to look at my life and what I wanted, and got me to really realizing how much the life that I was living at that moment really belonged to someone else. And while it was obviously my life, the choices weren't exactly my choices along the way. Inherently my choices, yes, but heavily influenced by the needs, wants, and desires of others. So I then started on this journey of resetting some of those choices, and a career change, or the format of my career changed at that point. I became an entrepreneur around that time, and then moved across the country, divorced. All of those types of things happened to begin to reset some of what I wanted. And the going into working for myself at that time allowed me to travel and allowed me to reconnect with that gypsy soul part of me that had really, up until that point, felt very trapped. Um, so, really, it took until my early 40s before I was really like, okay, I'm getting to the point of being a little bit more trusting that I can stay connected to the life that I want and the desires that I want. And in 2004, I was given the opportunity to work for a client in London for a number of years, and went back and forth, spending a good deal of time in London, coming back and spending time with my children. They would come over in the summer. And so there was a bit of back and forth for a number of years. But being in Europe allowed me to reconnect with that dream of living in France, and that adventurous um, part of myself, that gypsy part of myself, really began to flourish. And it was really at this time that it was like, okay, like I need to take some serious steps to make this dream happen. It's not going to happen on its own. And it was kind of during this time, a few years later, that I met my beloved, and I absolutely had said to him initially when we started dating that if he wasn't willing to live in France one day, then this wasn't a relationship that I wanted to pursue. And I was really at that point of aligning all of the pieces of my life so that they would support or come along, or somehow like the puzzle pieces fit to allow the dream to actually um, be said yes to. And and then it took another, it took until 2024. It took, my husband passed away, and my father passed. And it was really a conversation with my father, and my father had just gone into hospice, and I had gotten a contact from a prior colleague about an opportunity in France. And it did not go unnoticed by me that France was making itself known to me. And it kind of slipped out of my consciousness for a bit while we were getting, kids through high school and off on their own, and all of those things were happening, and it had slipped away. And I spoke to my father about it in those final days of his life. This possible opportunity for France has come up, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. And he was just like, go, just go, don't wait. He said, don't worry if it doesn't work, it'll be fine, just go. And he was really adamant in the conversation. He had known how much it had meant to me over the years, and and he didn't want me to have any regrets. He told me that in his life, he really, on his deathbed, had no regrets in the way that he had lived his life. My dad would have given the shirt off his back to anyone. And that was something that was like the most important thing to him, was to show up for his family, his community, and he did that through to the absolute end of his life. Um, and he's like, that was his dream. That was what he wanted for his life, and he wanted me to have what I wanted. So when I found myself a month or so later on a call, finding out that I had a path to move to France. There was a visa that I could get that would allow me to create my company. And like suddenly the universe showed up and said, okay, here's the path, here's all the steps. Are you going to say yes? Up to you. And you're kind of faced with that moment that you realize there's nothing blocking. All of those excuses that you had in your head are gone, and you have a choice to make. And it's scary because you don't have all of the answers. There's no guarantee that it's going to work out. It might not. You might fail. You might mess it up. Any of those things can happen. But in that moment, you have to face the fear and say yes anyway. And it was in that moment that I really had my first conscious battle, I would say, with fear, where I said yes to fear and stepped off the edge of that cliff, not knowing if there would be a foothold to catch me. And over the course of the next year plus now, moving to a new country and a new language gives you plenty of opportunities to face fear every single day. When you don't know how to navigate a situation, you don't know how something's going to work, or how something works, you don't know how to express yourself, you've got to figure all of those things out. You've got to plan conversations and practice conversations ahead of time. All of these things that are necessary. But with every single one of those challenges, when you take it on and show up and muddle your way through it, gradually you build confidence and courage. And this last, March, around March, I had arrived in a new village that I was checking out. I had a sick puppy at the time who needed to see a vet, so I was worried about him. And that day, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? And I knew what I needed to do. I knew how to find a local vet. I knew how to ask and get a recommendation and call and make an appointment. And it was that afternoon, having taken Paolo to the vet, got him his meds, and he was feeling better, that I realized that I was no longer afraid of those situations. I was no longer afraid of living in France. I had built a trust in myself, a confidence in myself that I could navigate my life here. And in that, like, it just felt like such a huge realization and such a big moment, because in that building of the confidence in that situation, it also spilled out into other areas of my life. I became much more confident in building and making friendships in France, more confident even in my work, or more confident in my relationship with my children. It just spilled into every other area of my life. So in shamanism, we talk about fear as being one of the four natural enemies. And truly, the battle of fear is to walk through it as if it weren't there, move through it anyway, and do it over and over and over again. And you will eventually have that moment of realization that you've beat it, that you're free from it, and that you have an inner confidence and trust in yourself that you can handle things. Like, I'm at that point now where I know that I can handle anything life dishes out at me. I'll deal with whatever it is, whatever comes. And there is a freedom and a peace that comes from that. So, with that, I will leave it there. If you are in a season of transformation, I hope that you will like this video and subscribe to the channel and stick around for more content. And if there's any way that I can support you in your season of change, I will leave a link in the show notes below. And with that, I will say a biento. Take care of yourself and be kind to one another.